Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Beyond the Mention from AI Brand Visibility to Downstream Impact, with a special view at zero-click metrics as well. My name's Adele. I run product marketing at Similarweb, but the real stars of the show today are Rand and Aleda. Aleda, Rand, great to have you with us.
Lovely to be here.
Hello, Adele. It's so great to be able to be here with both of you.
Thank you. So Aleda is actually both of these probably don't need an introduction, but I'll do a very short one anyway. Um, Aleda is founder of Aranti, a brilliant SEO agency with clients all over the world. She is the co-founder of Finchling, a new digital PR software. If you haven't checked it out, check it out because digital PR is huge and it's going to be even more important in the world of AI. Aleda, you also run SEO FOMO, events, newsletters, and even paddle tournaments now for SEOs, right?
Somehow, it's the natural evolution you're in search, right? You need to find ways to keep yourself busy because we are not so busy somehow.
And speaking of busy, there's another busy man with us, Rand. So if you're like me, you probably spent a lot of Fridays watching him on videos, Whiteboard Fridays back in the day. And now he's running three different companies, Snack Bar Studio, Alert Mouse, Spark Toro, which is an audience insights software. Again, similar to digital PR, audience insights very important in the world of AI when audience behavior is changing a bit quicker than it used to. I'm sure you can attest to, Rand. And he's also the co-author of a book coming out very soon called Zero Click Marketing. So thank you both for being with us here today. Our agenda, we've got three main agenda items. So we're going to be setting the scene by looking at some zero-click data. What does it mean? Why should you care? Should you panic? And Rand will help you, don't worry. Next up, we're going to look at some downstream impact of AI brand visibility. So most people are talking about how you can become more visible. Obviously, that's an important conversation, but we're now going to start looking at what does visibility actually give you as a brand. And lastly, we'll look at some measurement frameworks. So Rand has a new way of interpreting the traditional tofu, mofu, bofu funnel, and Aleda has a really comprehensive look at the metrics, the KPIs, the questions that you need to be asking and answering to really have a robust search strategy today. So, without further ado, we're going to take a look at the latest zero-click search data. I can already see some questions coming in, and yes, this webinar is recorded, so it'll be sent to you afterwards on Monday, I believe, and we will also be sending the deck. So feel free to take screenshots, share them, but we will share the deck on Monday with you. So if you haven't seen this on your LinkedIn feed, I don't know where you've been. Rand, I've already been seeing this shared in presentation decks in the SEO community as well. You've been looking at zero clicks for a while now. Can you tell us why you think it's so important that marketers pay attention to this metric and follow it closely?
Yeah. So this is something that we have been looking at since about 2016, years ago, when I was at Moz, and Aleda and I used to do a bunch of conferences together in the SEO space. And back then, we were looking at numbers between maybe 35 and 40% zero click. So you can see that we have nearly doubled in the last decade. And what this means is this is the percent of searches that occur on Google that don't leave Google, right? They stay inside that ecosystem. And conceivably, this number is even higher depending on how you think about it. Because if you look at that 32% that make a click, we can see from Similarweb's panel that 27% of those went to AI mode, they went to YouTube, they went to Maps, they went to Images, they went to Google News, or any other Google-owned property. So more than a quarter of all the clicks that do happen stay inside of an Alphabet-owned property. This shouldn't surprise anyone, right? If you think about how Meta's properties, right? Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, they keep everyone they possibly can inside those ecosystems. Reddit has stopped linking out. They stopped linking out years ago, right? nearly impossible to get clicks from Reddit nowadays. Uh, this is true for LinkedIn. It's true for obviously TikTok. It's true for every single platform you can think of on the web. They're all trying to hoard traffic. Big tech wants to stay big. They no longer want to participate in the open web the way they used to. And as a result, I would say this number is important to watch because if you are still putting lots of eggs in classic kinds of SEO and PPC, you're going to see diminishing returns, even if you're doing a better and better job every year, right? You'd have to do twice as well today as you did 10 years ago to see the same results. So this number we think is very important. This is why I really appreciate, Adele, your help and Similarweb's help putting this together. And we didn't just do this for the United States. We've got 6 countries in total, or 6 regions that we covered. Yeah, so you can see UK, the UK,
We
who
don't
knows
click.
why? Yeah. Uh,
We trust AI mode more.
yeah. Brits and Scots and Welshmen, they just don't want to click. They're really into staying on Google comparatively. I um we don't, I'm sorry, Aleda, we don't have Spain, but I don't know what do you think it is about the Germans that make them the clickiest of the countries?
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? I would have expected it to be a little bit different, and it was France at the end of the day because they haven't had AI overviews in.
That's right, right.
So it's strangely it's not like this. When I have done studies for the German market across different type of verticals, especially in e-commerce. One of the things that it has taken my attention is that they have a lot of marketplaces and comparison sites across
Hmm.
different verticals. So maybe they are more keen and more used from a behavior standpoint to compare and validate. So it might be that,
Yeah,
I guess.
that sounds like a very logical theory. I also note one of the interesting things to see here. So in the lighter red, there's is the performs another search, right? So this is essentially someone who, whatever I Google for air conditioners, and then I see a list of things and I go, oh, wait, air conditioners for small spaces, or air conditioners for large homes, or air conditioning installation, right? I make that refined search. Or I could search for air conditioners and then I see what the prices are and I go, okay, well, I'm done with that. Beach vacations, right? We're not specifying that this is a search refinement. We're simply saying another search happened after the first one. And you can see that in the United States, the percent of people who are performing that next search is the very highest at 29%. This is averaged across desktop and mobile, but very highest. And then in Germany and France, it's really quite a bit lower, right?
So
So
they may be
that,
more precise
yeah,
searches.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was going to
So
mention it's also interesting in Germany, the recent ruling around AI overviews that Google is held responsible for the content within those AI overviews because it's not always direct from brands. So I do imagine that this trend may stay relatively flat in Germany rather than zero clicks increasing massively, just with how Google is
yeah,
considering the SERP there as well.
I, I think that is the case, Adele. I think you're absolutely right. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if Google pulls back a little bit on AI overviews. I will point out, I just want to make sure that this is clear. So AI overviews obviously seem to be accelerating this trend, but if you look back, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, you
Yeah.
see numbers that are not that far off of this, right? So if we, this is a steady state increase. We went from 60% to 68%. 5 years before that, it was 10% lower. So yes, the growth rate has increased a little bit with AI overviews, but Google was answering these without AI. They were answering them with sports scores. They were answering them with info boxes. They were pulling longer and longer snippets of pages. I would generally argue that Google doesn't necessarily need AI in order to answer a tremendous percent of searches without a click.
And it's a really good point. You mentioned sports because Google published recently that they had their highest usage day the
Yes.
other day, week, I think it was the Argentina-Egypt game. A lady, you posted about that. So are you seeing that brands are seeing a lot less traffic direct to their website overall? Because sometimes people search more, they're seeing less, but are you seeing that reflected in clients' numbers, for instance?
100%. And in fact, it takes my attention because I understand, and it's completely reasonable that a lot of the conversations and are focused on more uh, content first and publishers and affiliates that by all means, because their whole business has been focused on content, and they needed this clicks and traffic for the whole business model that they have had. Um, they have been the ones that have been like the worst impacted from all of this. But you can see this across every single vertical and market. The ones that are even more transactional as well, and that don't have had the highest share of AI overviews in any case. So, for example, I work a lot with e-commerce, and at the top of the viewport sort of view in the SERPs, very top at the very top, even higher with no ads or anything. You had the product packs, no AI overviews, but it has been the product packs for a lot of commercially oriented product
Mm.
queries. Some of them like broader topics related with products, headphones. So, for example, or like anything that had any relationship with any product that could be sold later on. That it has been increasing with the visibility of product packs at the very top. Then a lot of people also ask, incentivizing the user to engage further in within SERPs, of course. So all of that has been incrementally negatively impacting the clicks and the traffic that a lot of PLPs, the product listing pages, e-commerce used to have, right? And a lot of more of the traffic is going to the PDPs, to the product detail pages. So for the
Mm.
very end of the customer journey, because still the transaction has been so far, now we know that this is even changing now, but has been happening in the website of the retailer, of the brand. um, this is where the traffic was going and continue to increase in many cases, depending if you have been playing your cards well, your strategies and so on. But for all of these PLPs, the category pages, facet URLs, and so on, that had been like historically the ones that had gotten a lot of the traffic and engagement in e-commerce, they have been decreasing in the last few years. And it hasn't been because of AI overviews in this particular vertical. It has been because of the product pack that when you click on any of them, they, rather than taking you to that particular product that is showcased directly, they open up a product knowledge panel where you are shown a few links, a few options of the brand, retailers, competitors, and so on. And with a summary of pros and cons, reviews, and so on. So, of course, like all of this engagement still happens in the Google, within the Google SERPs, and less traffic for the brands and all of these bigger, well-established brands and retailers that had all of this authority. These category pages very far below, even if they continue ranking in the first position in organic. But uh, what is the traffic for those anymore? Not that high because of the product
Yeah.
at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll talk to this later, Adele, but I think this really speaks to strategy. Like not what should the tactical SEO be doing differently, but what should the business owner, what should the leadership team be doing to get the best bang for their buck in marketing, which is very different today than it was 10 years ago. I did
Yeah.
want to call out before we move on. Do you see that number? I suspect we're going to get questions about this, but AI mode, this is
Mm.
something that inside like my LinkedIn feed and a lot of the conversations that I see at marketing conferences, there's a lot of obsession with AI mode, right? People think that people are going directly to that, and that's where they're getting a ton of their searches. And don't get me wrong, 0.34% of Google's 3 trillion searches, that's still a lot. That's still a ton. But that is not what is eating clicks. That is not what is driving down traffic. AI mode is still very small. It's growing fast. I think 6 months ago, that number was less than half. But it is not the behemoth that people imagine it to be.
And of all the chatbots, actually, AI mode is the most friendly in terms of giving out links and, following on that traditional user journey that people are used to within Google. I mean, we did a we did have a look at the difference between clicking out from AI mode versus traditional Google, and it's very different. But AI mode is higher in percentage than any of the other chatbots. I suppose
Yeah.
that's one, because of how it looks, and two, because of how users behave and expect to behave within Google still.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
absolutely. The other thing I did want to call out, I don't think we have a graph for it, but people have been wondering, like, is there more or less traffic in total available today than in years past? And every other time I have done a zero click, research project with anyone, the answer to that has always been yes until now. Until now. And that is because the percent, it's two things. One, the percent of searches that end without a click is now, north of 65%, 68%, whatever it is, that um, search growth cannot make up for it. And the second thing is, it appears that uh, thanks to things like AI overviews, but all the things Google's been doing, searchers are more efficient. So to Aleda's point, they are completing a lot of their journey inside the Google ecosystem, which means that that website visit to learn more or discover or get content is ending. And I, I don't want to make a bunch of stereotypes about like, oh, the kids these days. It's not kids, it's all of us. It is all human beings who are connected to the internet who now have been trained to prefer quick answers, short videos, short snippets of text, bullet points, not long articles. The, the amount of content consumption on the web has actually dropped. It is, and it's shifted in terms of what is driving that behavior. So if you're an excellent short video creator, it is your time to shine. But if you were writing a bunch of long articles for SEO that ranked in Google, your days may be not coming to an end, but definitely, you are definitely in the, horse and buggy switch to the motor car.
Yeah, and it's about adapting to the content that users want. And it has always, the end goal is, what do people want to consume? That's
Yeah.
our goal, that's Google's goal, that's the LLM's goal. So moving with the times, yeah.
I mean,
So
I have my suspicions that this is not what users want, but rather what we've been trained to prefer by big tech companies. But that's for a philosophical discussion for later.
that's a very philosophical discussion, because I can't tell what's real anymore, my own want or what they want for me. Um, so actually moving on to LLMs now. So I mentioned at the beginning, visit obviously so many people are using LLMs for all sorts of things. We're just going to look at search, so how people are using it in an equivalent way to how they'd look at Google. And the reason we looked at this is because if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, a user asks AI for something. It doesn't necessarily mean a product recommendation. They ask for something, that's a prompt. What they get back is a response. And in the response, what we generally see is recommendations of brands within that response. If your brand is recommended, you are classed as visible. And that's the crux of what AI visibility tracking is, which I'm sure a lot of you on the call are doing today. If you're not, you're probably considering doing it. Now, that's great. And AI visibility tools are designed to, one, show you if you're visible, and two, how to get more visible. We are going to leave that conversation. There's plenty of tips. Aleda has so much good insight on how to become more visible, but we're actually going to look at the next question that, to Rand's point, is around like business leaders. What are business leaders asking for? It's not just the doers, the marketers. Is what happens once you are recommended? Is that a good thing for your brand? What does it give you back? Our assumption is here on the right is that probably a user remembers the recommendation and then they go on to visit your website, because we're still not in an agentic world yet. So probably they visit your app, your website, something to do with you in the next time period. So we looked at different industries, three different industries over 7 days. We could have looked longer, but we actually saw that most interactions tend to happen within 7 days. Interestingly, most interactions in this report happened on the same day. That's something that we didn't publish in the report itself, but I think it was around 70% happened within the same day. And we found that if a brand is recommended, that a user is more likely to visit that brand than their competitor, actually 2.5 times more likely. I'm going to talk about how we did this and the data behind it, but Rand attribution for something like visibility is not necessarily a new problem, but it's a old problem in a new world, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I do want to clarify, Adele, that in my opinion, what we did here is measurement, not attribution, right? We're making a correlation between this thing happened, right? Which is whatever. American Express was recommended in the AI answer, and Capital One wasn't there, or the inverse. And then in some time period after, visits to American Express's or Capital One's website occurred with these percentages. Do we know for certain that American Express, because they showed up in the AI response, that is for sure 100% the reason and the only reason that the human being behind the screen clicked on American Express sometime in the next 7 days? No, we don't know that. We are showing correlation data, and I think in a lot of ways this is the future of measurement. You make correlations. You don't attribute. We don't say this AI tool recommendation is responsible for 100% of the sign up that American Express got from these visits. That would be crazy pants McGillicuddy. And I instead, right, instead, I would urge us to think about this as visibility in any platform where people are paying attention, right? We know this from Coca-Cola's experiments in the 1960s, that when drivers drove by billboards for Coca-Cola, same store sales in the surrounding 25 miles went up by some percentage. Some billboards were more effective than others, and so they rolled out those billboards right to other regions. Same kind of thing here, right? We are not able to say more than that, but I do think this is answering one of those incredibly, incredibly pressing questions that every marketer has been getting from their boss and team and clients, if you work at an agency, around, hey, if we become more visible in AI, how much does that matter?
Yeah. And I think people are wanting the answer to that question for a number of reasons. It may be to invest in an AI visibility tool. It may be that they have invested in AI visibility and now they need to prove impact. You're going to walk through a lot of the ways that you can measure that in a more structured way. But the way that we looked at this was if we take finance, for example, we took anyone who hadn't visited American Express or Capital One in the last 28 days. So this is the way that we can try to be more scientific about it. As Rand says, it can never be 100%, but this is how we tried to get to, say, 90%. We then looked at prompts around the finance category and then the answers. So if an answer had American Express, we saw of that group, 7% of them within 7 days then went on to visit American Express versus Capital One, which wasn't mentioned, 3% did. In the other group, where Capital One was recommended, 14% went on to visit the Capital One website versus only 3% of users went to visit American Express. So we see that in these groups, in this controlled experiment, the people who were asking relevant prompts and getting, recommended answers, if the brand wasn't mentioned in the answer, a big brand was likely to get around 3% visits. If a brand was mentioned, that increases even more. So there's certainly an element of brand recognition already with some of the big brands, but we think that this starts to really answer that question in a way that businesses can understand. Businesses understand traffic, they make money from traffic. If how are they getting people to how are they getting sales at the moment? It's people coming to their website or a property, and that's not changing. Well, yeah. There are some ways that this is a core question that we look to answer. Aleda?
Yeah, so I think that is very worthy to highlight what you mentioned before. This is a problem that we have been inheriting and it has been dragging in our world before. Like, but at least with traditional search results, like the likely outcome that was highly correlated with our rankings and visibility was traffic, right? But because of the nature of AI answers, it's not necessarily anymore, right? And that doesn't mean that your efforts are not paying off or you are not influencing the decision making journey or the purchasing journey of the user as well. That for sure. And since there are so many different layers, like getting mentioned in the right way or recommended, because we need to think that indeed it's still a performance channel, but we have now a higher, let's say, layer of branding channel as well, because the AI platforms are indeed adding this additional recommendation or assistance sort of action to the answers based on our context and history and preferences as well. So it's important and very worthy to be able to try as much as possible, even if it is not as straightforward as before, right? To try to identify the patterns and identify the correlations to better understand what is working or not, or where are the gaps, where are the opportunities as well to improve further and to align all of our actions and optimization work accordingly, indeed.
Yeah, and I think that it goes on to the user behavior. So we looked at the cohorts of the users who used AI and got an AI recommended answer versus cohorts who just visited the websites. And what we see on the left is AI visits are way more heavily influenced by search, which is a bit ironic. You'd expect it to be the other way around, but the assumption we make from that is people see the brand on AI. AI has a bit of a crap user journey in terms of getting from AI to a brand. So they go to the traditional way of searching, and this is probably dominated by branded search. That's our assumption. We're going to look at that in a bit more detail soon. Whereas the non-AI influence visits are a little bit more evenly spread out between the channels. So search, ironically, is really important for LLMs, well, it appears to be. And I think, in Rand's zero click study, we saw that paid search is growing. And I think that's one not to forget because paid is the easiest channel to win on. It's also the easiest channel to lose on if people are bidding on your keywords, which is happening a lot more these days. It's paid is getting more expensive and it's getting more competitive. So being aware of if people are bidding on your brand, especially big brands, I think that's another big thing that brands should be aware of in this landscape.
Yeah, I would just also point out that the behavior that I highlighted a study from I think it was late last year that showed basically that the the most likely outcome of someone starting to use an AI tool was that they would search on Google a lot more, right? And this I think this is because ChatGPT, Claude, the others, they intentionally rarely include links, right? And so as a result, they'll say, "Hey, Capital One or Sephora or you know um, American Express," and then they've left it to the user to go, God damn it, are you going to make me open a new tab and type that in and then search Google? You really are. Why? Why? Okay, I'll do it. Right? And look, if I were ChatGPT or OpenAI, I would go to all the brands and say, hey, for $5 a click, we'll make sure that all the times your brand is mentioned, you get a link.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
That value exchange is yes, a scary prospect in terms of it the brands having to pay for it where they haven't before. But ChatGPT did just or I'm not sure if they've done it permanently, but they are experimenting. The links to brands have got better now. We've seen traffic triple from referral, but I mean it's at such a low rate that it's
yeah.
still quite negligent for most brands.
Yeah, I do know that Google has been a lot under pressure, and I mean it's completely needed and understandable that this is the way, and they have tried to improve with an AI mode. But I think that we are overlooking of what we request as well to OpenAI regarding ChatGPT data. By all means, I believe that the platform that has been more generous and transparent so far has been Microsoft and with the Bing
Thanks.
Clarity integration so far. More is needed. More is needed because I believe that we wouldn't have many of these doubts if we had more first-party data, indeed, in order to clarify all of these doubts. And one thing that I would like to highlight I love when you showcase this graph and the research that you did of how AI influence visits generated more search related or the share or the importance of search as well, because I believe that because of all of the hype of AI in general, there's so many different ways to piggyback or to leverage it. Unfortunately, some of the advice might be even going against traditional SEO best practice. And this shows the importance of how critical it is to align all of the different channels initiatives so they can expand and strengthen each other in a good way rather than, so for example, AI generated content at scale or self-serving listicles or like all these short-sighted tactics that might work to get a little bit of more citation right now, but can end up hurting your SEO initiatives and other type of initiatives, right? So it's not about optimizing for one or the other. It shows how users go between channels and all of the channels need to be able to optimize in a way that they support each other as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Aleida. I think that's such an important point, and it's one I've seen you make a lot, Lily Ray make a lot, and I think it's definitely something that businesses, because it's new, it's shiny, people are under pressure, they need to perform, and they're hearing lots of conflicting information. So I really think that's a very important message. We're getting loads of questions in the chat about things around the data. I'm going to try and answer in the text, and we'll also follow up afterwards. But we're down to our last 10 minutes. So with that, let's move on to how people can actually think about things in this new world. So away from the data and into frameworks and what that looks like. Aleida, I'm going to pass over to you. You've got like some great frameworks here. Just tell me when you want me to skip to the next one and go.
Yes, sure thing. So I believe that something that we have been doing or we should have been doing for a long time in SEO has been trying to tie the visibility or traditional rankings in the past, right, to what we optimize and then the impact that brings business wise. So we need to try to, at a very high level, indeed, thinking from a very, very strategical standpoint, extrapolate this thinking into AI search presence, and rather than focusing on like disconnected metrics to try to track visibility on one hand and business impact or the other, like we should try to tie all of them in order to make sure that what we are communicating to clients and decision makers actually resonates to them and makes sense to them to continue investing or not, to stop if it is definitely not ROI positive. So the decision that I have made has been to come up with this framework that I'm presenting here with different metric layers. The first one for presence, answering questions regarding are you actually appearing and how in AI answers for those that actually matter with visibility related KPIs. Then readiness, which is are you structurally prepared to be surfaced in the answers, in the right answers that you really want to. And then the business impact is your visibility and optimization translating into value, yes or no? And in order to decide if it is worthy to move forward or to shift, right? In terms of the presence, and I know that there are many AI trackers out there. I know that Similarweb also provides by all means, like I am one of the users and I love how simple and straightforward and clean you keep everything because I think this tendency, right, to overload it with a lot of metrics that at the end of the day they don't mean necessarily much, right, to help you to actually understand and answer key questions, right, regarding your presence. And I think that you are doing it pretty well. So here I am presenting like a few key presence metrics to focus on. Are we showing up where we need to? Prompt coverage. Are we being endorsed or just included? Recommendation rate because of this branding layer. Link citations rate is like, is the visibility capable of driving visits or purchases more than just links, but at some point also conversions directly from there. The comparative win rate, are we winning the shortlist when users compare options, and the representation accuracy as well? Are we being understood properly or mispresented in a answer, right? And here I provide, like, it can go through with a little bit of more detail, an example of how to calculate it and how it should be showcased. And by all means, this is something that you can use with any AI tracker. It will be much more useful if an AI tracker, of course, is able to provide all of this by default in it, but it's something that you can obtain with any AI tracker and then calculate yourself. And as you can see, all of this, the idea is that they should help you to assess and take optimization actions. Why? Because you will see how in the next slide, when we talk about prompt coverage, are we showing up where we need to, shows whether the brand appears or all and where it matters. And if you don't, then it points to distribution gaps or core optimization gaps. Recommendation rate, if it is very low, if you are not being endorsed, often point to trust correlation and differentiation gaps for citations from third parties as well.
Is that on the next slide?
Yes, this is in the each AI presence KPI should help to assess and take optimization actions indeed. And the comparative win rate shows whether the brand is framed as a strong option as you want. So low values often point to positioning or proof gaps, right? So as I mentioned, like all of these metrics that we want to use for visibility assessment should connect with something that we should try to optimize for. So it's actually meaningful and tangible for you to try to change as well, because otherwise
no more vanity metrics, Aleida.
No more vanity metrics. Thank you. Yes, that is what I try here. And for effectiveness as well, I believe that one of the major challenges that I'm seeing in the industry is that they tend to translate or to extrapolate the usual keywords that they have been tracking all this time and just to convert them into prompts. So I believe that for this to be valuable and representative, you need a good prompt library that actually goes through the full customer journey and follow with the patterns that users are actually taking. I have in the next slide a little guide with let's say workbook to help you to create them from the different data sources that you have. And by the way, a lot of these data sources you will see that are not necessarily coming from keyword tools, but your actual users or customer problems, the constraints that they have, your persona, like the different scenarios for which you want to help them to solve the issues that your product or service solve, because that is what is actually valuable. And that is when you want to be recommended for, right? And I believe that has more value of trying to obsess over specific prompt visibility, like because this will tend to get personalized, like individually, right? So we need a topical level for all of this different type of prompts that reflect the full customer journey for this product line, this service line, for this type of audience, to solve this issue. And this is how I want to come across in these answers, right? So I believe that this is everything, because I have also seen a lot of people saying, oh, take a look at my visibility of my brand, and then you realize that 90% of the prompts are branded.
Yeah.
Not necessarily something.
Yeah, the answer's in the question. Yeah.
Then this also connects, as I mentioned before, with readiness or the level of optimization that explain the structural optimization reasons behind the visibility gaps and the characteristics. And again, if you see these principles, these are principles that if you have been doing SEO for a while in a sophisticated way, they tie very well with the different principles and pillars of a good optimization, making your content accessible, useful, recognizable, consistent, credible, differentiated, EAT, anybody, right? Like fresh, up to date, corroborated also from third parties. So again, this should be something that we should have been doing all this time. I have seen comments saying, "Oh, but what are the differences between AI search optimization and traditional SEO?" And say, now citations have a higher impact and influence, and it's true. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have been doing something about it, because we knew the value of good digital PR, community management, social media. Sometimes they carried backlinks, sometimes they didn't, but it's still helping with the overall authority of your entity, of your brand, and so on. And so I think that this just takes it to the next level, right? And an additional reason to make all of this actions to happen, and principles to ensure that for those particular areas and topics that you want to get visibility, you do. And again, the optimization should be prioritized based on the AI search present gaps identified before. Again, where it actually matters for those product lines or stage of the customer journey that have more impact for your business and where you want to get more visibility. I have created another free resource in case you want to take the next step, and I try to help here to make it easy. And last but not least, the business impact, right? Our visibility and readiness efforts translated into value. So here I try as much as possible to differentiate the different metrics that we have and the level of confidence. So at the beginning, we have the observe layer, the highest confidence, lowest coverage, though, the ones from our own analytics, right? Like the metrics from platforms passing a refer, like AI refer session, AI conversion rate, revenue per AI visit, AI assisted conversions, and so on. And with this, we can directly answer like how many users click and converted from an AI answer, right? But yeah, the reality is that this is the floor, right? Not the ceiling. And we are trying as much as possible here to understand the opportunities here in the ceiling. Then we have the proxy metrics that we own, some directional signals from your own analytics that correlate with AI influence, but don't prove it. So again, correlations like branded search lift, direct and unattributed lift, demand of cited pages, survey-based discovery. A really good point that my SEO friend Chris Green mentioned the other day is like those pages that get more access from AI bots as well. So like the lifts that can directionally explain a little bit increase of visibility. Third-party proxy, that the ones from external tools like yours, right? Similarweb AI traffic behavior versus competitors that can help us to understand benchmark prompt samples per page as well to be able to have a better view of like the behavioral pattern across pages and areas and so on. And finally, the model layer, lowest confidence, to estimate, not to prove anything, but correlating the different metrics before we can develop some hypotheses here of what's going on and where our investment is better allocated accordingly, right? And on the next slides, you can see that I go through some of the observed metrics as well, go through them, the engagement rate and average engagement time versus organic clicks. I give a few ideas of the key ones that I will go ahead and configure in your analytics. So for example, GA4 is offering now a AI assistance channel by default. I will recommend you build your own just in case, and to make sure that those platforms that you actually care about are in there. Then we also have the proxy signals that fills some of the ceiling to be valuable. They should be a pattern consistent with an AI trend.
Oh, Almeida froze.
Sorry?
Oh, you froze
for a second.
So yes, in the proxy signals like that I specify in there, I have a few of own proxy data and third-party signals as well. So for example, for third-party, the ones that can be obtained from Similarweb, but yes, I believe that also it will be interesting to see a little bit of like the correlation with social listening on brand mentions in AI agency context as well, for example. And last, about the layer that should be used to estimate what cannot be measured directly but needed for plans. And I give an example in there. So, for example, incremental branded clicks, visit leads, or pipeline above baseline by stated AI influence assumption percentage and the model influence value, right? With that sensitivity band in there, because again, it's just an hypothesis. You're playing here what we have. Then this pretty much is to plan ahead and to have a sort of reference to provide decision makers, right? But at the end of the day, we're trying to come up with something that is connected with the visibility, with the level of optimization that can explain where you are and how what you are doing is impacting the final business outcome, right? And at the end, you will see in the next slide how I go through all of the KPIs to explain them. And I know that there is a lot on this. I actually provide examples for all of this in the guide that I have published on my site that you can see in there, explaining, going through all of them. More than happy to follow up with questions later on as well. And if you have any doubts to follow up through email, feel free to get in touch with me also in social about this, because this is something that I have been working on a while, and I want to continue evolving, refining also for different scenarios and different verticals that I know very well that work differently and need different approaches many times as well. So, but hopefully this sets a good base. I believe that what I want to incentivize is that people start thinking into these terms, because in SEO, unfortunately, we were too very used to have an easy methodology, right? Like with traffic that highly correlated with rankings and so on, and value that we provided. And we need to become a little bit more, let's say, sophisticated in order to explain it now.
And it's exciting, like Aleida, and I mean, you're helping people. These frameworks and these ideas are super helpful for everyone. And everyone, the deck will be shared so you can look at the links. We've got 1 minute left, so I want to quickly do this, Rand, before we go.
Yeah, this can
How it
be
used to
super
be.
fast. So this is just my sort of high level strategic change that I think is happening, which is that for these, 20 years, almost 30 of the internet, right? You earned attention through all this top of middle of bottom of funnel stuff, right? You earned attention in search and social, and then you drive people to your websites. And that's where you turn them into fans and subscribers and customers and get them to read your content and do all of these things, and then they would convert. And what I'm arguing on this next slide is that this has changed. It's not just the search engines and the AI tools and the social networks and big tech and all of that. It's actually human beings who now want to start their journey on Instagram and end their journey on Instagram. And they want to do that on YouTube, and they want to do that on Reddit, and they want to do that on Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok. And yes, in AI mode in Google, and yes, in Claude, and yes, in ChatGPT. But the final thing that happens is that they will still use your website to take action, but almost nothing else. And so when you want to build those frameworks that Aleida was talking about to try and measure this stuff or have impact on it, I'm not just talking about AI. I'm talking about especially social and search as well. All that stuff is happening in those ecosystems, not on your site. That's what's changed.
Thank you, Rand. And it's so important to also like track your presence in those places, YouTube, Reddit. And we are quite laser focused on websites so we can expand our reach. So we are out of time. We've still got loads of questions that we'll try and do a follow-up LinkedIn post or something with the questions. Very briefly, Similarweb data that was used to power a lot of the data in these reports. Largely, it's from our collection. So a lot of the work that we've worked on with Rand has been first-party direct measurement. So yes, in the platform, we have everything's based on real user data, but it's calibrated. We can also look at those unique user journeys and follow them from place to place and get you some really interesting insights to share on webinars like this. Our platform helps you do all of these things. And quick resources, again, like look at this deck afterwards. You can sign up to Aleida's newsletter where she shares all of those amazing resources that she just shared. Rand's zero-click book that he's done with Amanda. Put your pre-ordering in. I think that today you will have seen why you need that and how you need to start your it's not just your tactics, like both Rand and Aleida said, it's your thinking, it's your strategy, doing all of those things differently. So Rand, Aleda, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so valuable for the audience. And I'm not surprised we ran over, to be honest. But I really appreciate you being with us here today.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you for having us, Adele.
Thank you
And
for the
thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you and see you again.